what brought you to having anything to do with the Lincoln Mystery Plays, or mystery plays at all?
Right, I can answer that one. I was doing a production in the cathedral of some Austrian mystery plays, which I knew very well, and I got the whole college involved, the choir and the orchestra, the pro musica, pro arte orchestra, and we got this massive production going on, John Bannister conducting, and after it was over, the then Chancellor, Victor de Waal, came into the cathedral and he said to me, "Why are you doing these foreign plays?" And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, why don't you do the Lincoln Mystery Plays?" And I said, "What?" I'd done a 4-year course in English literature, and the mystery plays and the miracle plays had taken 1 hour and a half lecture. They were of nobody cared about them. They were of no great importance, really. They didn't know that Judi Dench was already in the York Mystery Plays. People didn't know about that. And, I said, "Why don't you do the Lincoln Mystery Plays?" And I says, "The what?" Ignorant. And really that got me going. That casual remark, and I thought, well, we've got to get onto this and find somebody who's done a modernised version of the script. A chap from Winchester, who was the principal of King Alfred's College, and he gave me his modernised version of it, and a couple of years later, the '78 production happened. Now, do you want to go on about the '78 production?
I'm going to ask you another question, but I just need to adjust your microphone.
Right.
It's just rattling very slightly when you're...
I'm down.
Is that right?
Yeah, boing, boing, boing.
Excellent, there you go. So the '78 production,
yes,
was the first production.
That's right.
And obviously it was your idea to do this?
Right, entirely, yes.
So who did you have to approach to get this off the ground?
Well, apart from getting the script from Marshall Rose down at Winchester, I approached the dean, and he asked people about whether it would make any money, and he was advised that it would lose money. And just at that time, there's a new sub-dean, what's his name, arrived in Lincoln, and now he was a go-getter. He made things happen, and he said, I described it to him, and he said, don't be a craven bastard, let's do it, you see. And we got going on the mystery plays, and it was because of that sort of positive attitude to it that it actually happened. It cost £6,000, and I think we took £6,000. That was a lot, I suppose, in those days. And we staged it under the central tower. The only trouble with staging it under the central tower was that nobody could hear anything because the sound goes straight up the tower. But I'm exaggerating to make a sort of joke of it. But Rex Davis was the name of the sub-dean. This was the man who we owe a lot to, because though he made a lot of enemies, he also got things done. It was a big cast, it was a big production, and it actually, people still remember it and talk about it quite favourably. And the fact that it didn't actually lose any money was a great advantage. And after that, I went to the next board meeting, and and just said, because I'd been reading about where the mystery plays would have been played in Lincoln, and almost certainly they would have been played outside the West Front on a whole series of small stages, with a central stage as well, a platea they call it, and small stages around. And I just thought, well, why don't we do it outside the West Front? And I came to this meeting, and I suggested I'd like to do that. And Rex, of course, jumped on that. He thought that was absolutely wonderful. We'd do it there. But it's quite a daunting project, really, to do it outside the West Front. For the reason that it was an enormous area. So we had to have a great big stage, and we had to. Nigel Clark did the lighting, and he had 5.5 miles of cable to light it, and it had disadvantage in that it was difficult to concentrate it when it's such a big area. But there we had 1,000 seats in a great rake like this, and the West Front, and as I say, 5.5 miles of cable. It produced some moments that I think were the ones that I was happiest with, or let me just say proudest of. One idea I had, I thought, was a unique idea, a new idea, nobody had done it before, that when Jesus was on the cross dying, and he cries out, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And the picture would be that God would be standing behind him with his arms out, touching the cross where the nails went in, and Jesus on the cross was the only person who didn't know that God was behind him. And that I heard 3 sermons preached on that, and I thought, I've had an original idea at long last, something that nobody's done before, until I found a medieval picture of exactly that, of Jesus on the cross, God behind him, and actually there was a dove up there, or pigeon, or whatever it was, the Holy Spirit it was, and so it wasn't an original idea. Somebody had thought of it before, but it didn't matter. That was well, actually, it did catch people's attention. There was a former Bishop of Lincoln who used to come round, a little walk he was having in the evening, just at the right time, when that moment was about to happen. He came round every night just to see it, which was lovely. I mean, it was a lovely moment to hear about that. Well, shortly after that, I was reading this university magazine. It was on medieval drama. It was a specialised magazine, and it had an advert for a conference in Leuven, the second International Colloquium on Medieval Drama, it was called, rather grandly. And I thought, I'd love to go to that. I could talk about my production, so I wrote to them and said I'd like to come, and they said, oh yes, do come along. So I went along, and I saw who the other delegates were on the list, and a whole lot of them had written books on the mystery plays. And I thought, what am I doing here? You know, how can I get away with this? And then I had, I think, quite a good idea. I thought, I'll talk about directing the plays, because I bet many of them haven't directed a full-scale production. And I had, it was Gus Koza's pictures of that production, and showed them the slides, and I talked about directing it, and I think in quite a light-hearted way, as told them all the tales of what had happened, and they seemed to be amused. And really, as soon as I got home, I was invited to take a production to the next international colloquium in Viterbo, and which is fairly near to Rome. It's a medieval city, so that was the next thing we had to do. And I thought, well, how on earth can we take a production to Viterbo? We don't, you know. It's an enormous undertaking, really, to take a whole lot of actors and sets and lights and everything to Italy. But it was Jack Jones, I think. He said, well, why don't we get the 2 college minibuses and put the cast in one, and we'll have the we'll have the lights and the costumes in the other, and go and do it. And so we did. And that was an extraordinary experience. First of all, we were acting to specialists, and that was a bit worrying. You know, they were all scholars, but what I remember about it was, we thought at one stage, we wondered whether we'd ever get it to happen. We were acting in a sort of courtyard with an double arch like this, and a nice stone slab for Jesus to die on, and then steps going up, and God could be up there. And all the delegates were rather late in arriving, typical sort of Italian setup, you know. We've got to have a big supper first, and they were all turning up, and it was raining, and I thought, God Almighty, it's pouring with rain. What on earth are we going to do? And the rain gradually eased off, and across the sky, this dark blue sky, these swallows were cutting through the air, and it was quite magical, really, and the transformation from this rain to this beautiful night. And all these delegates were sitting around on little wooden chairs. You know, there's only about 150 of them there, but as I said, a lot of them are very well known. And as the music started, John Bannister and his 5 musicians started, this sound was going up into the night, this beautiful sound, these facsimile instruments, medieval instruments, and the singing. And I looked up, and God was up there with his mask. And as I looked up, I saw glinting in the lights 2 tears running down his face, and I thought, my God, this is going to be all right. And do you know, those delegates, they absolutely loved it, because it was very simple. It was, we've talked already about you can do them very simply, because we had to take the cross with us, the Last Supper table, we couldn't take all that much stuff. So you couldn't do a great big production. It was a small production, and they absolutely went for it, and we became the sort of stars of the show, as it were. Everybody wanted our autograph, not really, but it was just a totally magical night. It really was.
Was language a problem on that particular production?
No, because it was an international group of people, so most of them spoke English. If they were Italian, they spoke enough English, but they were from all over the world. You know, they were from American, Chinese, Japanese. Good God, you know, you name it, that's where they'd come from. Because these conferences really were quite prestigious events. This was just the second one. There'd been one in Leeds, and this was the second one. And so language is no problem. We'll come to the next production though, which, because of that production, is it all right me going on like this?
Perfect.
Okay, right. The next production was an invitation. And this was because of that production we were recommended to be part of it. And it was an invitation, no less, from the Vatican, and production in a festival of medieval drama in Holy Week itself. There had never been sacred drama in Holy Week before. This was the very first time. And I don't know what we did wrong, because I haven't ever done it again. But you mentioned language. We knew perfectly well that the audience were going to be Italian speakers. So we just hoped that they'd know the story well enough to be able to gather exactly what was going on. I remember getting an Italian audience to settle down is a bit of a problem, because they get very excited and things like that and won't stop talking. And my sister, who was a professional actress, she was playing the mature Virgin Mary. She was going round the back going, shh, shh, quack, quack, quack. Finally got them quiet. And they were a fabulous audience. We had this beautiful church we were in, which had a cupola over the top, this dome with God painted on it, and it just was unique, and it's almost the same date as the actual text, 1465. That's when it was built, that church, Vittorio in Calabro. One little detail, the different sort of reaction when you do the crucifixion in England. You may get the odd person having a surreptitious little weep, you know, wiping their eyes and pretending that they're not crying. And it's the nuns who do most of the crying, but the crucifixion. But when it came to the crucifixion in Rome on Good Friday, there were 4 young ladies right at the front, and they weren't crying. They were howling. They really were. They were making it hell of a din, really. And the cast were coming off and saying, "What on earth's going on? What's wrong with them?" And I said, "This is success. Get out there." Well, anyway, we came to the end, and we were in the Ladies' Chapel, which was acting as our green room. And these 3 girls appeared, and they said, "We have come to apologise." So I said, "What are you apologising for?" "Because we are making so much noise." So I said, oh, no, that was wonderful. I'm glad you were so involved. "You see," they said, and I thought this was so charming, "your Jesus is in our hearts." Well, you can't ask for anything more than that. I thought, well, this has gone all right. Well, that was 84, and the next production was in Lincoln in 85. In the cloister, and I always think became very memorable for me, that production, in that it was a particular night we set the fire alarm off. I'll just tell you how that happened, why it happened. Doing the crucifixion, I used to love to have torches at the crucifixion. You get the flames coming up like this and the smoke coming up and so on. But I realised, because the Magna Carta was in the library just above us, you'd have to be careful what you were doing. And I ordered some particular torches which were, they were wax and very little smoke, but still enough really to get that effect. And unbeknown to me, they'd run out of these torches, which I specially got. And there was a chap working at the cathedral for the dean, and he was not the brightest of guys. And he decided to take things into his own hands, and he'd make some torches. And he got sticks, and he put sacking round them, covered it in tar. And I can see it to this day. The casts were waiting to come on, and there was Jesus was on the cross, you see, not expecting anything untoward, and I saw this blowtorch going off and smoke roaring up like this, and of course every fire alarm in the building went off. There's absolute mayhem going on. Oh, it was awful. It was shattering, really. And we forgot all about Jesus left up on the cross. I just remember Satan going up to Jesus and looking up at him and saying, "I've met my match, mate," he said. Well, anyway, as I say, the fire alarm's going off, and one moment suddenly the door burst open under the arches of the Wren Library, and these 8 firemen in yellow suits with yellow helmets came marching in, and the first one said, "Who set the fire alarm off? The effing fire alarm off," you see. Well, we got everything sort of settled down after that. They got the fire alarm off, and these firemen finally went away. They were very cross, having been brought out. And Jesus was still up on the cross, and the lighting guy, I heard him saying, "I think they're going to leave the poor devil up there," you see. and he thought of going like this, blowing out the fires. But anyway, we settled everybody down, and we had this wonderful bit of music, sacred music that the choir sang. Just sang that again, and it was straight back into it. It was as if it hadn't happened. I mean, everybody remembered it, of course, but it was the strongest memory I have, that production. And the dean took me home and gave me to his home afterwards, and gave me a very strong whiskey. He said, "You'll sleep well after that, my boy." And I did. But it's engraved on the memory. It was a really incredible moment, as you can well imagine.
So the way the Mystery Plays works is it goes on a 4-yearly cycle.
Yes.
How did that actually? Is there a reason why that came into fashion, or?
No, there isn't. I think we just thought that would be a good gap, really. That's all, so people would come to the next production, and we'd all recover from it, really, because it is such a big commitment. You really need to get your breath back, and I think that's the only reason. I think it's as simple as that.
But it seems that all the other cycles have adopted a similar.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Time period, haven't they?
Yes, they probably find exactly the same. That people need to have a breather, and you've got to get a new audience, you see, a new lot of people.
So who do you think is a typical audience for a mystery play show?
That does vary. When we were outside the West Front, they were as many people coming from the rest of the world as were coming from Lincoln. In fact, more. Because it took a long time for Lincoln to catch on to it, to get really good audiences from Lincolnshire. So they had to get to know it, and they had to come to the decision are mystery plays. I heard people say, you see, that was a sort of breakthrough. But 81, we had them from really all over the world. There was a whole Japanese brigade, I remember, came over, and all nations, I think they were, and so they froze outside the West Front. It was an extremely cold summer, and poor chap playing Jesus, he had an awful time being in a nappy on a 16-foot cross outside the West Front, with the wind coming off the Urals going round and round and round. And he told a reporter, a very illustrious American reporter I introduced him to afterwards, and he says, "Blimey," he said, "I nearly died up there." One of Joe Charles's better remarks. But anyway, that took us up to 85. After that, it was more regular, really, the happenings, and the next major production, 89, and that we played it in Southall first, and we played it in Lincoln for a fortnight, and then we went to America with it. This was a good deal of work had gone into getting what was really the equivalent of the Arts Council in America to pay for it, and we actually took 22 people to America, which is a lot.
And how did that idea come about in the first place?
To go to America?
Yeah.
Well, there was a particularly lively fellow in America who wanted to do. He'd got the Magna Carta coming over to Portland, and he wanted the plays to go on at the same time. And he got hold of our Chancellor at the time and said, "We want to do the mystery plays at the same time." And this Chancellor said, "Well, you can't do them. You must have our cast." And that's how it all started. And then I went out there, and we had for a summer, and we did fundraising occasions, and really getting people used to the idea. So that's how that came about, and there we were, having done, as I said, 3 weeks, one in Southall, two in Lincoln. We were all flying out to America, and not in little minibuses, but in jumbo jets. We went out, and that was an extraordinary experience, because nobody had done mystery plays in America before. That they hadn't seen mystery plays in their own land, and this resulted in, well, the publicity machine there is awesome, really. The local television services and so on, that they were publicising this wherever we went, because we toured around. We went to 5 different venues, and as I said, they hadn't seen mystery plays, and our first audience, we were absolutely thrilled. It was a place called Bend. It was quite high up at about 6,000 feet, very beautiful place. And our first night in America, there was an audience of 1,000, and gosh, 1,000 people. That was the smallest audience, because as time went on, the word got around, and we were regularly getting audiences of 3,000-4,000 and so on. Open air productions they were, and by the time we got back to Portland, the audiences were 7,000. I mean, in a great Roman type arena. It was called the Rose Garden. It was a mock-up of a Greek theatre, and 7,000 people there. And it was so exciting, it really was. This beautiful setting. You could see Portland, the city of the lights in the background, way off in the distance. And you got, okay, let's have the crucifixion again. There it was against that background. I don't know, it's another extraordinary thing is the Americans do, if they like you, they give you a standing ovation. They all stand up at the end. And when 7,000 people stand up, you think, oh, this must be quite good then. Not too bad. Well, that I won't go on too much about it, but it really was an awesome experience, really. One other thing I could just tell you, a little detail. I like the idea to follow the idea of having candles at the Last Supper, I've done this in Lincoln, and people had to pay 50p for their candle, so you didn't manage to get rid of many, really, for the Last Supper. But come to America, America was very affluent in those days, they gave away 3,000 candles, and they gave them, the central sort of gangway was like that, going up through this Greek amphitheatre shape. So what we did was to get some people to come down and light the ones in the gangway right in the middle. And I was standing at the back with a TV playwright called John Challen, who was playing Herod at that time. And we were the only people who saw this, I think. We were standing there right at the back, and there was this great curve facing us to the audience. And the lights were handed out, and gradually this enormous curve got bigger and bigger. It really was absolute magic to see it happen, this curve opening out. And John Challen flung his arms around me and said, "Oh, Keith," he said, "this is too beautiful." Well, that's another memory. Unfortunately, the audience didn't see that one. It was only us. And that then brought us back to Lincoln. And we thought at that stage that we were going to get a grant of £10,000 from British Telecom. But that fell through, and we thought, what on earth can we do? And it was Tony Raby, give him the credit for this. He says, well, let's just do them for what we've got. And we thought, well, what have we got? We've got £2,000. Well, we'll just do a bit of the mystery plays. And that's exactly what we did. We did 50 minutes of the mystery plays in the cloister with 4 lights, one at each corner. Dave said you can only have 4 lights. We had 4 lights, and we did 50 minutes, and actually people loved it. It wasn't too long. It was very concentrated then in those 50 minutes, and it had again a simplicity about it. And we actually just spent the money that we got. We cut our cloth according to what we could afford. And it was again what we have discussed. There's 2 ways of doing these plays. You either do the big civic production, or you do the more intimate one. And that was an extraordinary experience. It was an enormous relief, part of many, that we could do them. And thanks to Tony Raby for having the idea that it would be possible. To do a shortened version. thinking laterally.
I'm going to stop you there a moment
Right.
because I need to just swap the tape. We're off again.
We're off
and
again.
running.
Yes, well, 93 was in the nave, and I felt it really was, to a certain extent, my fault. I set it too wide, too much of the nave. It was extremely long set there.
Were you comfy with the show being back in the nave with the sound issues and all of that?
Yeah, it was much better down in the nave than it was under the central tower. That seemed to work okay. People seemed to be able to hear, but having that enormous space, that enormous length, then, you know, they would disappear down into the distance and you would get a sort of echo effect of people down there. That production, my brother-in-law approached me. He was an actor called George Baker, and he said, I think it'd be a great idea to get this film for national television. And so I said, ha 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 ha. And he then found a director who he'd worked with before, and a producer, and we had several meetings at, you know, places like the Ivy restaurant, sort of place I'd never go to. You know. But anyway, it began to look possible that the production could actually be filmed. We met an agent lady who was going to sell it to Channel 4, and the director came up. He stayed here, and he started working out these camera angles and God knows what else. And the agent, we met the agent, and she said yes. Channel 4 were very interested in taking this. And the long and the short of it was that really at the last moment the production was going on then. It was into its second week, and they were saying who they wanted to play God. They wanted to bring in a famous actor, and they got him lined up, and it was getting difficult because the lady who was playing the Virgin Mary wasn't going to play the Virgin Mary in the film. It was going to be my sister because she was a known actress, and it really was a time of great anxiety. I just wondered whether we'd ever get it done. However, to cut a long story short, the lady, the agent who was selling it to Channel 4, obviously got a better offer of some sort. So the word just came through. It said, "Oh no, we don't want to do it. No, we're not going to do it. The tapes of the national production are still on the shelves, so it's off."
Just like that.
Just like that. So I have to admit a deep sense of relief. All these problems about somebody else taking over the part, you know, and the fun, and you know the actor who was going to take over the part of God. You know, he was a terrifying man. If you've seen Last of the Summer Wine and things like that, he was in all sorts of things. There were two of them who were in line for God. There was an Indian fellow whose name, just for the moment, is very well known, forgotten. But all that went out the window, and we got on, finished the production, and said, "Oh God, thank goodness we're not doing." But it would have been great if it had happened, wouldn't it? Then it been seen nationally. But however, there were advantages. Now that took us then to 97, and we were back in the cloisters. We were at this stage beginning to get really good Lincoln audiences. They weren't all coming from all over the world. They were our audience, and I don't know. It was very much our production because Neil, playing Jesus, and what's his name?
Is it Ben?
Ben. Thank you. Ben playing Satan, and that was lovely, really, to have very much our production stage there. The only downer was the fellow, better remain nameless, who was an ex-theatre director. He was the producer, and he wasn't very good at raising money and so on. He says so himself, and it didn't make money. It was a bit of a liability, really, the whole thing.
But it was never. The mystery plays was never about making money. It was just to self-perpetuate, wasn't it?
It broke even. That's really what it did. But he always said, "I've done a rotten job, really. I'm a theatre director. I'm not a producer. I'm not a money man," which he wasn't. No, so I mean, fair enough. So that was 97, and the next one was 2000, which was my song. I thought this is when I should stop and stop while you're winning, as it were. It's we picked on 2000 because it was a very significant year, and we had a very astute, splendid lady doing the production side of it, and she got a Millennium Grant for us of 30,000. Now this made an extraordinary difference, really, to giving you sort of flexibility of what you could do, and I started thinking that I would love, really, to start the production off in the cloister, and then tell the audience to follow the cross, and Simon Cyrene carry the cross, and they would follow the cross into the nave, and then the crucifixion would happen in the nave, sort of halfway down the nave. Well, I wanted a sort of rising platform halfway down the nave, so the crucifixion take place on the top of it. And I asked the then director of it, Art Walker, I said, do you think you could manage that? No, impossible, my boy. It costs far too much money. Now, Art, it's very funny. He loved to say no and then say, I've done it, which is exactly what he did. And he got this wonderful steel structure ramp going up with a flat bit at the top of the crucifixion, and because of what was happening, the crucifixion, this steel was just right, the right substance to have, brutal, hard, and well, what we did, we were in the cloister, and Jesus was going to have to take the cross, but he didn't have to carry it, for Simon Cyrene would carry it, and he came up towards us under the archways, and they went round the cloisters and then off into the nave, and the audience had to follow Jesus, follow the cross. And we gave everybody a candle. I had a candle, lit it, and I remember the most, again, just chance effect of all these people going along with their tapers, and the arches of the cloister. You saw the lights flicking through, more and more people, the lights flicking through like this. It was Ali, who you know very well. Ali and I, practically, it was a bit like embracing, you know, when you saw this great curve opening in Portland. It was a moment like that. We saw this wonderful effect of these people going by and the flickering lights going round the arches. Then what we did was to take the audience and line them up in front of the screen. So they were all penned in, as it were. And this gave another wonderful visual picture. Neil, Jesus, had the cross on his shoulder, and I told him, I want you to go from where the people are standing to the foot of that great steel ramp. And he went off all on his own, taking the cross, and it made my hair, if I'd had hair, it would have stood on end. And he went to the foot there on his own, as I say, and then I had an idea which I'd heard about from another production. I got the cast at that moment to shout out and rush forward, "Crucify him!" Well, if you shout in the cathedral, the echoes were absolutely awesome, really they were. And then the actual crucifixion after that took place. We did lose audibility, of course, the crucifixion being in the nave, but I know friends of mine, professional actors, they said their hair was standing on it. They had hair at that moment. They were really, really quite affected by it. And then we acted out the crucifixion up in that position. We couldn't get God close behind him. He had to be right up in Banks's view, a long way away. However, the token was there that God was there, even though Jesus didn't know he was there. And my favourite moment was in the production. And
so with that production, you also had some very unusual costumes.
Yes.
There was only a few of them, but how did they come about?
Well, there was a chap who made those costumes. I met him abroad in a place called Camerino, one of our tours abroad, and they made costumes, these two, for the carnival, Notting Hill. You know, those incredible costumes, and they'd made these, and he said we could. We had to actually pay for them, but he said we could borrow those costumes. Some people hated them. I think Karen didn't like hers, she told me. But other people thought they were very unusual. Did you like them?
I thought they were very different.
Yes, they were, yeah.
But definitely memorable.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
But did they fit in, or were they more of a juxtaposition against the other costumes?
It was they didn't really fit in, I don't think, to be quite honest about it. But they were.
I think during the procession, though, it gave a certain amount of a carnival.
Yes.
Chaos.
That's right.
Which worked.
Yes, it did. Yes. Yes. Thank you for that. Thanks, Bill. But that's the story so far. And happily retired, and they gave me that.
So now that you've done your stint on the mystery plays and handed it over,
Yes.
so to speak,
Yes.
how do you feel the productions have been since 2000? Have you enjoyed them? Have you not enjoyed them? Do you think everything is true to how you originally wanted the mystery plays to be?
Well, they, to a certain extent, they've had to be different because they haven't had the finance that we had. We were terribly lucky having the dean and chapter in the show and so on. We got a lot of things like the cathedral. We didn't have to pay. We just had to pay the vergers double time and so on. But we didn't have to pay to rehearse or to use the cathedral for performance. So the productions have had to be on a smaller scale. I very much enjoyed Jeff Redmond's production. He very interestingly it got this idea of the guilds and their importance, and that's what he and that I thought was a very novel idea, interesting idea. And I think the company who were in that seemed to enjoy it a lot. I didn't enjoy everything, I'm not pretending that. The production that we have just had, I very much enjoyed the first half because I felt a sort of bit, having very poor eyesight, it was very nice for me to be close, and there we were sitting on bales of hay.
And it's a different location as well.
Yes, different location, down in the Bishop's Palace. And that had a sort of novelty about it. And it had a wonderful integrity, I thought. And that I thought was excellent. But partly because of my sight and my hearing and God knows what else, being a poor old thing, I got up to the cloister, and I was sitting in the second or third row, and I couldn't see properly and I couldn't hear properly. So that was a shame. There were some bits I really did not like. I did not like the crucifixion and the ratchet of heaving up Jesus. I found offensive, really. But there were, I think, some lovely performances there. But unfortunately, I just didn't see or hear them. And it was really my fault. I should have sat in the front row instead of the second or third row, you know. But these things happen. So I lost the best bits, I think, of the second half. I gather there was a very good Virgin Mary, mature Virgin Mary performance, which I missed the best of that, really. So really, it's been a mixed bag. It's, you know, it's on a smaller scale, but there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
And obviously, other towns do a version of Mystery Cycle.
Sorry?
Other towns do
Yes, yeah.
versions of their own.
Yeah.
Mystery Chester and York and so on.
Yeah.
Have you seen many of those? How do you
Yes.
feel Lincoln holds up compared to
Well,
the other cities?
York, obviously, it is the biggest sort of civic production. It's an enormous production, and they've got masses of money, and they get a director like Greg Doran from the Royal Shakespeare, you know, the top man at present, and they can afford that and so on. I'm always a bit awe-inspired by York, I must say. I've seen lots of productions of it. I think these these big civic productions do lose on the intimacy to a certain extent. I remember a lady who was a producer from York, the money lady, and she came to see ours, and she said, we've got all the razzmatazz, but you have got the spirituality. And I said, you wouldn't like to write that down, would you? But I mean, they are amazing productions. They really are. I'd love to have seen those early ones with Judi Dench, you know, being a schoolgirl and working her way up to the Virgin Mary, and the three famous productions that Martin Brown did in York. And her very last one, as I say, was the Virgin Mary. Then she went up. Her first professional job after that was to go to the Old Vic and play Juliet in Romeo and Juliet, I think. Not a bad start. No, I've seen Chester. I saw one particular production at Chester, and there was a lot I enjoyed about it, but and also, yes, the other great thing about it was there was one professional actor in a production. It was a chap called Colin McFarlane, who played Jesus and Satan for us. I saw him there, and he was wonderful as God, and he glittering sort of God he was. And I remember coming home and said, there was the most fantastic actor playing God. I must find out where he's from, what he's from. Got hold of his agent and said I was very interested, you know, in asking him to come and play for us. And I said, where does he live? He lives in Lincoln. So that's how Colin McFarlane came to be in our production, and been part of us all ever since. I remember him when we were in America. He played the two parts. He had to play both parts because you couldn't have a black man playing Satan and a white man playing Jesus. So they the two actors had to double up, and of course he was superb as Satan. But I wonder how it worked out when he was playing Jesus. And he was deeply moving. And I remember saying to him, God, you were so moving. All technique, my boy, it's all technique. He said, come on. I don't know. I don't know. Where did we get to? What have I said?
What is your view on what will happen with the Mysteries from now on? We've just had 2012 production.
Yeah.
There's a production plan for 2016. How do you see the Mysteries progressing? What do you think?
It's awfully difficult to say. I wish I knew. I think financially it's in a better position than it has been at times in the past. I think it will go on, really. I think there's enough momentum, really, and there's enough devotion. One of the extraordinary things about the mystery plays, and this makes me really very positive about it, is how people react to being in it. It gets hold of you somehow. I don't know, perhaps it is the amount of commitment that it takes. They become our mystery plays, as it were, and it becomes something that will go on. I'm absolutely sure it will. And what I've heard about what's happening already makes me think that it's in safe hands, because they've got it in their hearts. It's as simple as that. Yeah. So, yes, I'm pretty sanguine about it. I think we're going to have mystery plays for a good long time.
I think that's a perfect place to stop.